All right, welcome back. We are Comp229 Web Application Development, and it's week 3, part 6 of our video series. And we're talking about the Express Generator partials, which are partial files, and how to use them. So navigating with partials. Requirements. Well, last time we added a navbar and a jumbotron, and those things you should know how to use at this point. You can see that this is getting quite full, and we're going to, when we move over to the next video series for week 4, we're going to wipe some of this out so we can start afresh. On the bottom, we've also added understanding of a little bit more about Bootstrap and Font Awesome and how it really makes our site more appealing as a low-cost solution to creating a site template, 5-page site. Why is it low cost? Because we don't have to do a lot of work for CSS to make it look nice. What are we going to do this demo? We're going to use partial files to compose our single page application, and we're going to show you how to set your links active depending on the page, again air quotes, where the user navigates to. Also, we're going to add in a sticky footer. At the end of this video, you should have a better understanding of how to use Express and EJS. Let's get to it. All right, where last we left off, we created this navigation scheme, and we also added in a jumbotron. But we have some problems right now. One of the problems is that we have our active link always set to the home page. So how do we do it? How do we check to see what site we're on? And then, depending on the site we're on, the page, we can set our nav link active. Well, we can use EJS for the first time in a while. We've been using this. The only time we use EJS so far is to inject a little bit of information about our title or the page. Well, this title information is the thing that we're going to use to switch between which object is active. So first of all, let's set this not active. So we're just going to move down here and put this down here like this. So just change this to just a regular nav item. And to show you what this looks like when it's not active, if I go back to our page, wherever it may be, here it is. And if I refresh, you can see now that it's kind of dull. Even no matter which site I go to or which page, none of it kind of brightens up and becomes white. I want this to be more like a kind of a trail, right? You know, if you will, to kind of show us where we are, which site we're on right now. I mean, even though it says homepage, it'd be nice for the navigation to tell us as well, to give feedback to the user. Good UX. All right, so how do we do that? So first of all, we have to detect which page we're on. So we can use EJS for this. We can use less than %, right? And we can say if, we can use an if statement, right? And we can kind of do one of these. We can say if, let's just move this back to EJS for a second, just to give us some more code hinting. If a condition is true, and the condition might be something like if our title, right? If that's equal to home, and we're going to make sure it's right, capital H for home. Then we're going to close this off. Then what we want to do is we want to open this up. And this is how you do if statements. If it's home, then we want to, instead of having this nav item be here, we want to change our list item. We want to produce a list item or inject a list item. Remember, we're composing our pages. The pages don't exist until we actually go and compose them. So we're saying, okay, I want one of two list items, either nav item active or a regular nav item. And we can use an else statement for that. Else, right? We can do something that looks like this. Notice that our curly braces are inside of the directive, right? It can't be outside here. That would be just for any kind of HTML. So we can say we'll end this off with a closed curly brace inside of the directive. That is the syntax we can use. And this is one way of doing it. Now you might think, whoa, there's a lot of syntax for us to switch between active and nav item. You're right. And there's going to be something better we're going to use later on when we when we talk Angular in the second half of semester, you're going to see how this can be improved upon, right? One thing that EJS does not have, even though it's a little scripting language, it does not have a switch statement. You can do if, else if, but there's no switch case. Just letting you know. All right, so let's test this first one. So if I go back out to here and if I refresh, you can see now that it's highlighted, but if I click here, it goes off. This is good. This is the behavior we want. But I want this to also highlight these ones. So then, therefore, all we have to do is put that same structure around the other ones. So again, I can just take the same structure, copy it, and I can surround this or embed it in this link here. But instead of me searching for home, this time I'm going to search for about. Same thing for this one. It's pretty painless. A little bit of duplication, which I don't like. And same thing with this one. And finally, same thing with this one. That was an easy fix. One thing to note, though, is that in our Navbar brand uses this slash. So if you want it, if it's on the slash or the home to light up, we can make a more complex condition. We can say if, as an example, our title is home, or we can still use the double pipe. Our title is equal to slash. That's also something that can happen, one or the two, right? And title is a thing that comes down in here. Title is actually always going to be home. That's incorrect. Let me go back to that. It's never going to be slash. That's the route. This is actually going to work regardless of whether we pick one or the other, because the routes are being captured up here in our route. If I look here, if it's either the slash or the home, it's going to be the same title. So we didn't have to do that. All right, so that should be good enough. Let's see how this works. So going back, we can see that if I refresh, home is highlighted. If I click about is highlighted, products, services, contact now. Our navigation scheme looks pretty good. Let's add in a footer bar now. So I'm going to go back to my Jumbotron example in Bootstrap, and all the way down there's something called navs. Navs give us other kind of navigation. For example, there's horizontal alignment, there's vertical alignment, there's tabs, pills, and there's also other kinds of things here. Tabs with drop-downs, pills with drop-downs, JavaScript behavior, and a bunch of other stuff. And what we're looking for, it might not be in this one, it might be inside of our navbar. Let's take a look at down here. Navbar actually gives us a bunch of different things. And one of them it gives us is the ability for us to change our text. We can actually add Navbar Text in there, as well as I want to use a sticky navbar. So there's one that's called fixed top, where I can add that in, or fixed bottom. All right, so it's always on the bottom, or a sticky top. I want to have this fixed bottom navbar, so I'm just going to grab this code right here. Again, this is inside of navbar fixed bottom. Copy it, go back to our code, and at the bottom, right before we get to the script section, I'm going to put a footer. So again, this will be the bottom nav. We're going to put in a footer. Let's change this back to HTML. We don't need EJS for now. Let's go back to HTML, just to help us with coding. Oop, that's not what I wanted. Footer, and we're still in EJS. Just a moment here. I want it to go back to HTML, not EJS. One more time. Yes, okay, footer. And inside there, we're going to put in a nav with a navbar fixed bottom, navbar light, background light. We can put in navbar dark, background dark. So it's a navbar. Instead of putting a navbar brand fixed bottom with some kind of link, let's make it so that it is a display 6 or something like that. Okay, so I'm going to grab this, and instead of it being an H1, I'm going to show you the differences for styles. So we'll leave it as an H1, but we'll change it to like display 6 and see what it does. And we'll add in, you know, something like all rights reserved, you know, a copyright statement. So and copy, right? All rights reserved, right? and we're going to put in our date, which is 2020. Later on, we're going to inject a date in here instead of putting it in there. You can think about how would you inject a date. So copyright 2020, all rights reserved, right? Okay, so that's what this navbar is going to look like. Let's see if display 6 does it, or if we have to change our H1 tag to be something else. So let's go back to our site and refresh. You can see now that we have this massive site that's black. It's kind of dark, and then our code here looks pretty big. It's probably too big for what I want. Let's go back and change it to something smaller. So we'll say H6 and refresh. That's better. That's an H6 tag, right? Except we can't see it. Why? Well, the hint is what we saw earlier, which is this Navbar Text stuff. If I go up, you can see that I can use something called Navbar Text so that we can see our text. So we can put our class Navbar Text around our H6. Let's do that. So H6, right? We can add that in. So navbar -text. And now when we go back and we refresh, you can see now that it's visible. Okay, a little all rights reserved statement on the bottom left corner. And the great thing about this is if I was to make this responsive, so let's say I don't want to make this big, I want to change the page size to here, you can see that it always stays at the bottom. Always, always, always. No matter how much or how little content there is, it's going to stay at the bottom. This may present a problem later on when we have content that needs to scroll, which means we may have to push this down with a little bit of CSS later on. But for now, it looks pretty good. All right, so that's our sticky bottom or our fixed bottom navbar. We can also make this a sticky top. We can also make it transparent. We can do a lot of stuff later on. But for now, some of those special effects are done. All right, cool. We've added a sticky bottom. But now it comes to this point in time where we talked about before, which is, wouldn't it be nice if we can separate some of these pieces out and add in partial files for all this kind of stuff? The answer is yes, it would be nice. And we can have an example of that inside of our document here. So our document, remember, it's going to be composed. And what we can use is I want to inject or import some information. Now, the way it would work is, and I'm just going to let's go back into EJS for a second to give us some support. So I want to import, that's our line. I want to import a file in here. All right, so that's what's going to happen. So we need to kind of put it inside here. Let's make a new, inside of our views folder, let's make a new folder called partials. There's partials. Inside of our partials, let's add another file called header.ejs and another one called footer.ejs. Let's do that. So new file, header.ejs. Another one, new file, footer.ejs. Right now they're empty. In our header.ejs, let's grab everything from the head of our document. So I'm going to go back into my index.ejs and grab all of this stuff that's in the header of my document. Now this could include everything in the head, but not including the main navigation. So this part right here is what I'm talking about. So I'm going to cut this out. I'm going to put this inside the header and put this inside there. There we go. All right, cool. I'm going to save that. And I'm going to do the same thing for the footer. The footer of the document, again, I'm going to go back to my index.ejs, go all the way to the bottom. So this is the footer, not this part. And this is kind of like the bottom nav, which is going to be separate. So this is the footer. I'm going to grab this part, cut it out. I'm going to go into our footer, and I'm going to paste it. So that's our footer. Save. Save. I need two more. So that's our footer. So I'm going to say go into partials and import footer, or header, sorry, header over here, header.ejs. That's what this is going to do. And I want to do the same thing for our footer down here. So import at the bottom our footer.ejs at the bottom. Okay, see where this is going. I want more. I want a nav, main nav, and a bottom nav. So let's go do that. So new file. So main nav. We got to be careful how we're naming these because the conventions are very important. Main nav.ejs. And we're going to go back to our index. We're going to grab the entire main navigation. We're going to decouple it from everything that's in there and put it inside of our main nav. And we're going to do the same thing for our bottom nav. So bottom nav, cut it, make a new file, bottom nav.ejs. It's all going to be EJS, by the way, and paste it in. And then let's make it so that we save everything and we put in our imports where they're supposed to be. So import partials / main nav.js. And if this fails, we'll know what to do because it's going to say, it's going to complain. It's going to say, don't know what that is. And we can find out the code if we need to online. And this will be the bottom nav.ejs. And those are our directives. So now we're left within our template. If you notice, in our template, all we have is this main content, which is beautiful, right? We can actually take this out too and put it in its own content area here. And then our main template is just going to be a bunch of these directives. Why would we do this? And let's first of all see if it works. So save. I'm going to go back out to here and refresh. If we get a problem like this, it says cannot use import statement outside a module in C users blah 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 blah. Indexing while compiling EJS. If above error is not helpful, you may want to try EJS linked, right? And it tells you where to do that. Or if you're meant to create an async function, pass it in. So what is it talking about? Cannot use import statement outside of a module. Well, we modified everything pretty crazy. So the first thing I want to try, and it gives us a 500 error. 500 error is a server error. So let's stop this and just relaunch NodeMon. That's the first step. Then try it again. So is it still the problem that we're getting? Let's take a look and see how we can import partials with things. So import partials with EJS, and it'll give us an example about including a partial file. So it's not it's not import, it's include that we have to use. And notice it also has this little dash in front of it. So I was wrong. That's okay. That's an easy fix. So again, dash, right? Include is what we need to include here instead of the import statement. My mind is in another coding language. And once we've done this, this should fix our issue. Let's see if that does. If I go here and refresh, now we're back to normal again. However, we see that our navigation, if I refresh again, you can see that our navigation is incomplete. We have part of it here, but, well, let's go back into our code and see what we missed. So here's include partials main nav. So there's header and main nav. We got the bottom nav and we didn't get the bottom nav. We got the part of it, but not all of it. So why did this happen? Right? Why did this happen? Well, first of all, it says there's something that's not saved. So the first thing is our main nav isn't saved. So let's go into the editor and save all. That's the first thing. And we did get the bottom. Okay, but so we got this. Now we're back to normal. And now we can see that it's working properly. Sometimes we have to go through this troubleshooting just a little bit, and that's totally fine to do. But now we've got something that we can play with. This is where we want to go. We've got one template, and in this template, which is wonderful here, we have some directives. But really, we can just focus on the content. So this content here is going to be slightly different for every page. Notice that maybe we want to have a container, a Jumbotron for some pages, but not others. And then now we get into this idea of, well, if the content is different, we can actually switch on the content itself and then kind of inject other content in here as well. We can have another partial area. Instead of partials, we can have a content under the views folder, and we can inject different things in there. So we may go there. We'll see how it goes, but this is where I want you guys to be for week 3. Week 3, we've completed the following. We've completed navigation, and we've completed separating the parts of our site into different partial files. Why is this good? Because let's suppose now that in my error page, here's our error page, right? And right now all it does is gives me a message and some error status and an error stack. Yeah, that's pretty cool, but maybe our error page should be better than that. And what I can do is I can say, well, I want to include, right? Not import. I want to include our inside partials. I want to include our header, right? Because we didn't even have that before. So I want to include the header. So header. And I want to also include here our navbar, because I want to be able to get out of here if there's a problem. So we're going to go into our nav, right? So main nav is what I want, main nav. I also want to include our footer and our bottom nav. So bottom nav as well as our footer. Now this is for our error pages, right? Footer. So what this does for us is when I hit an error, so let's say I go to a site that I don't know, like this one, right? Right now I'm getting a really weird error where it says reference error, include partials header EJS. It doesn't know what that is. And why is that? So what did I do wrong for us to get there, right? And it says title is not defined, right? So title is not defined. And the reason for this is because in my error page, in my what's happening is it's thinking about that we need a title for our main nav. That's how we are navigating, and we don't have a title. Let's just get rid of our main nav for now, and let's see what it looks like with just the header piece. So we have Bootstrap, but we don't have a navigation scheme. If I refresh now, we have some better stuff. We have this. It says another message. It says reference error in our views error.ejs include partials header, and it says and we can see here that title still is something that we're looking for as it's inside of our viewport inside of our header. So that's an issue, right? Because we don't have title coming in here, we can't use our header as well, not the way we've written it. So if I go back to my header, if I want to be friendly with our header, right, instead of putting in the title, we want to inject the title in later with a little bit of JavaScript. So for now, we're just going to leave this title blank, right, for me. Save. Go back out here and refresh. Okay, cool. Now that is what I was looking for. Hey, look, we've got a not found error. We've got our bottom nav. We don't have a top nav right now, but we do have Bootstrap working. And so our page, our error page, looks a little bit nicer than what it did before. We're going to make this change a little bit nicer in a bit. All right, so that is our error template. And again, that's any error. So where does that error template come from? If you look at the app.js, which is our manifest, you can see that in the event that there's an error, right, then we can render the error page. This is right here. Here's our error handler. Res render error, right? And remember that when we send res render error, right, we took out our title for now, but remember how this works. This is kind of like a little bit of routing right here in our manifest. And if I look at my index route here, you can see that res render, what am I rendering, and the title is what I can actually add in. Let's put that back in. So let's go back in, and we're going to go back into our error, right? So that's out here in app.js, and we're going to add that in as a package that I want to include in our title. So we're going to say this is error. That's our title, and we can actually specify the error if we really want to. We can also inject the error status code, whatever the error is. 404 error would be something we want to do, and that's the status code that we want, whatever that error is that we're going to get. Okay, so whatever the error code, we can put that in later on. For now, this is pretty cool. And let me go back now to that header, right, because we're going to do this. Here's our header, and in my header we're going to put back that title in there. So again, it's % equals to title %. So we'll put that title back in. And let's save everything. And go back out and refresh. And now we're pretty good. Notice it says error at the top of a title. That's pretty good. And what we want now is to put that the nav bar back so we can navigate away from this problem, right? So again, what I want to do is in my error.ejs, I'm going to put that nav bar back in. So % include partials main nav.ejs, and now what we have is our navigation back. And this is looking better. It'd be nice if our not found error was actually inside some kind of container so that it looks nicer than this. Let's go back, and by the way, we probably wouldn't want to make our error show after we deploy. This error stack is something that we don't want. The error message is okay, but the error status and the error stack we want to get rid of eventually. But for now, let's bury it inside of a div container with a class of container. So div with a class of container, right? And we want to put this stuff inside of that class. Sorry, I'm not getting any HTML support because we're using EJS. And now when I go back to that error and press refresh, you can see now it's a little bit nicer. So 404 not found is the status. We can definitely get rid of this. We don't want to show this all the time when we're fully operational. For now, we're going to leave it in because this is going to help us troubleshoot some of our issues. But you can see now that we have a way of navigating away from that problem where before we didn't. So now we have a custom error page as well. All right, that's more than enough for this lesson. So again, what we've covered is some really cool things. We broke everything into partials, and we were able to handle that finicky navbar active issue. So if you look at the main nav, we fixed it with a little bit of EJS code to allow us to move from one page to the other and set the navbar item active. Right, so very, very good way of doing things, and you've got a great foundation for what you're doing for assignment number 1. Guys, I'll see everyone next week on the next video where we start talking about Express MVC, as well as we start talking about MongoDB and how to do persistent data with our Express. See you next time.